Great. Hello. Welcome, everybody. I am so glad that you're joining us tonight. My name is Brooke Kidd. I'm the director of Joe's Move It Emporium, and we are here to have a conversation with musician, artist, culture vulture, Todd Marcus. All right. Welcome, Todd. Thank you so much for being here tonight.
Thank you, Brooke. It's good to be with everybody, and I'm excited about this project that tonight kicks off. I don't know if we call it a residency or extended engagement, but it's fun. It's going to be good.
Yeah, tonight, our your residency with Joe's is supported by a Maryland State Arts Council touring artist grant, and we are so happy to have the support to be able to present artists from all over the state to come and be at Joe's and share about their creative process. So tonight we're going to get to learn how you are inspired to compose and perform and do your transformational work in community.
I appreciate it, and there are as a jazz musician, as a bass clarinetist, as a composer. Um, my work over the past many years has certainly focused on musical exploration, but also on increasingly on different aspects of myself and my culture and different work that I do. And
Mhm.
as an artist, what we do is we interpret our experiences and our world around us, and that's given me some artwork that has come out of that that is very prominently featured in the work that I do. Um, we will be in our concert at Joe's Movement Emporium on April 16th. We'll be featuring my quintet performing music from an album that I did in 2018 called On These Streets, a Baltimore story.
Wow.
And that very much focuses on the other half of my life in Baltimore, in West Baltimore, in a neighborhood called Sandtown.
Mhm.
Um, this long historic Pennsylvania Avenue that was once the arts mecca of arts and entertainment in Baltimore City,
Yeah.
and where I have been part of a community nonprofit for 25 years. And after the death of our community resident, Freddie Gray, in
Mm, mm.
2015, um, as there was national media on us and we had unrest and the uprising, and a lot of the people weighing from outside, even inside Baltimore, but outside nationally, with perspectives and a lot of negativity. I felt as an artist it was a chance for me to do um, things that would highlight what I know to be the reality of our community. Not just our
Mhm.
challenges, yes, we know our challenges, but also our strengths.
Yeah.
And so a whole album and set of compositions came out of that, where it was called On These Streets. The reason it's called On These Streets of Baltimore Story is because each piece is kind of like a different portrait of life in our neighborhood. So On These Streets, um, Ground Zero at Penn and North, which is where a lot
Mm,
of the
mm.
protesting was focused.
Yeah.
On These Streets, Fear of the Known,
Mm.
signifying that our community, we know what the challenges are. It's not fear of the unknown, or On These Streets, it still gets still, focusing on the beauty still in our neighborhood. People talk about the negatives, but look at the beauty. So that's what we'll be performing music of on the 16th. And next Wednesday, we'll have another seminar, both in person and online, where I'll be bringing down several of my colleagues from Intersection of Change, which is our community nonprofit.
Yeah.
And we'll be talking about all of that, about community development, about meaningful ways of tackling this, about equity issues, about race issues, all of this that's so near and dear to me. Um, but today, we're not talking about any of that. Today, we're talking about the other half of my life, which is as the son of an Egyptian immigrant and as an artist, someone that I spoke to my dad maybe 10 plus years ago. And I said, hey, can you give me some Middle Eastern music to listen to?
Wow.
And he gave me some records. When he immigrated from Egypt, he brought a couple things over, and I started listening to it. And for me, growing up in New Jersey, not having an Egyptian community nearby, my mom being American, not speaking Arabic, that aspect of culture wasn't something I grew up with. I didn't have other family members from my Egyptian side of the family present.
Mm.
And so when I was probably seventh or eighth grade, we took a trip to Egypt for the first time, and that was a chance to connect with family there. But I always felt almost a little inadequate or not legitimate, and a little bit of identity crisis. That here I'm half Egyptian, but I didn't feel that I had that credibility. And so I found for myself that digging into my culture, my heritage through music was a very organic way that I was able to connect with that part of my heritage. And so that involved listening to the music, working to integrate it into jazz compositions, and that's spurred a whole host of compositions and work. And and today we have this chance in this conversation to dig into all of that, to the music, show you pictures, talk about Egyptian culture, the country. So that's a long kind of response to your question, but I appreciate
Yeah.
that you giving me this opportunity.
Yeah, I'd love to know what artists bring to their creative process, and especially their cultural experiences. And it's so important that we claim our heritage and celebrate it. So I'm excited to, know what your exploration of your father's heritage brings to your work, and then especially your experiences in Baltimore and giving voice to your community. Both are just, right on of what people want to know more about. So let's dig in. Take
Yeah.
us on the journey.
All right. So let's do this. Let's start by playing a little sample of some of my work that reflects what I've been doing as a composer and as a performer, of taking jazz and Middle Eastern music and incorporating the two of them. So let's do this here. Bear with me. I'm going to pull up some samples. Um, I have a new album that's coming out that comes out uh, officially in June, and we have an album release coming up in May. We'll be doing some tour dates, and this is music that was inspired by travels the last several years, 2015, 2017, 2018. I also back in 2013 did a recording that was um, very much in response to me looking at what was happening in Egypt's Arab Spring movement and responding to that and writing music. So let's do this. Let's look at a composition off the new album. One of the things we're going to talk about a lot today is how Middle Eastern music and Western harmony are very different. And this is a composition that's called Horus. Let's go ahead and listen to it first, and then we'll talk about it. right. So
Wow.
that's a little sample.
That's great.
Now,
Mhm,
what we hear in that is something that we'll be talking a bit about. These Middle Eastern scales.
mhm,
In the Middle East, they're called maqams,
mm,
Maqqams.
mm,
And in Middle Eastern music, we have notes in between the notes that you would have on a piano. So on a piano, if you for our musicians that are listening now or watching, from a C to a C sharp, we call that a half step.
mhm.
If it's a C to a D, it's a full step. That C sharp is in between the two, so we call it a half step. Um, let's do this. Let's do this. We're going to
Now,
do a demonstration.
great. And let me just ask a quick question. The horn section that we heard had you on bass clarinet,
That's right.
and what other uh, wind and horn instruments were used?
We had bass clarinet, we had tenor saxophone, alto saxophone, flute, trumpet,
Hmm.
and trombone, and then piano, bass,
Wow.
and drums.
Wow.
So let's do this. We're going to do a little shift. We're going to get creative. Bear with me. Okay, I'm back here, mobile. I don't know, can everybody see or hear me?
Yeah, coming in clear.
All right, great. So let us do this. For everybody at home, you are formally in the bass clarinet layer, which is the music room in my home. All right, so I'm trying to get us in there. So this is on the piano, that is our C, our C. If we do one step up, a whole step, we call that to D. And this is a whole step. So in between, we have half steps would be C to C sharp. So you can hear in between that C and D, we have now in Middle Eastern music. Let me go back. In between that C and C sharp, we have another note. So in Western harmony, we have this half step. In Middle Eastern music, we have a quarter step, a note that does not exist, obviously, on our Western keyboard. So that is one of the things that gives Middle Eastern music such a unique feel and sound. And being that I'm using these Western instruments, the challenge was, how do we have this Westernized scale, but still get the Middle Eastern flair and the Middle Eastern sound? And so that's what you hear happening a lot. Let's go ahead. Let's listen to one more selection here,
Okay.
and let's hear it together. And what I want everybody to listen out to are for these scales, these unison lines. In Middle Eastern music, you don't really have chords. You have just more unison lines over these drone notes. Let's give it a listen here. Let's see. This is a composition called Busa, which is Arabic for a kiss. dig into this a little bit more here and break down what you're hearing both as the Middle Eastern aspect, but also from a compositional standpoint.
Mhm.
So here we got a little introduction here with some flourishes. So let's listen to that. All right, so that's just our setup. Now we're going into the body of the song. And the first thing that you're going to hear are some Egyptian frame drums. These are very common in Middle Eastern music. Actually, let me
I
do it.
love them. I have several.
Phew,
Yeah.
beautiful. This is one. It looks like a tambourine. Very similar. And I don't know if we hold it close enough, you can see some of the intricate um,
It's beautiful.
ornamentation, and you see that a lot in Middle Eastern culture with
Mhm.
different items. So this is one of the drums that we hear the percussion introduced. It was important to have it reflected. There's another drum, and they are playing along with the bass on a pattern that's going boom, 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 boom. Very simple, but on top of that, that drone figure, we're going to introduce some of the Middle Eastern scales that will start coming in. Let's hear that. All right, so we call that our introduction part two. We set up the rhythmic aspect. We set up a little bit of the Middle Eastern flourishes. Now let's hear our melody. And this is, a lot of Middle Eastern music is performed by singers, vocalists, and oftentimes they're singing, the lyrics are poetry. And so hopefully this will come across as a very kind of longing sort of emotion. And you're going to hear the melody as bom bom bum bum bo dee doo doo dum ba-dum. Let's hear that. So we've got
Mhm.
that melody happening, we got that percussion continuing. And did you notice what else was happening? That as we have that melody, we have the ornamentation continuing. Let's hear that again from the beginning.
Yeah, those little flourishes.
All right, that was introduction one. Here's the rhythm. Now we're going to introduce some ornamentation. Here comes our melody. And those lines in between. And now we have gone through the first full statement of the melody. Now I was sharing that one of the challenges with Western music, Western harmony rather, and Middle Eastern is that Middle Eastern music doesn't have these chords like we do in jazz. However, in jazz, it's all about the harmony, this thick, rich harmony that gives jazz its sound, its flavor. And so we're going to listen to a section here now where we are going to repeat the melody, but now we've added some jazz harmony. Let's see if it works or not and what it sounds like. Remember, our melody is bom bom ba do da bo dee doo 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 doo. Here we
Mhm.
go. Our ornamentation. Here comes the melody. that takes us through the
Nice.
treatment of the melody. So that
Mhm.
hopefully that helps to show a little bit about how this composition was constructed, how it's organized, how it incorporates these different aspects of it.
Great. Um, that is just gorgeous stuff that you've been working on. And do you want to come back and so we can see your whole person? There we go. Maybe if I think your face and all in your studio space is more is good. Um, I'm really blown away at how you have incorporated the Middle Eastern rhythms with a jazz composition. I think there's not a lot of comparisons, but certainly Alice Coltrane comes to mind. There's some other artists or composers that inspire you.
Yeah, and I appreciate that you mentioned Alice Coltrane because her
Mhm.
husband, John Coltrane, who was one of my big influences in earlier years, is one that, especially in jazz, we look to as one of the forerunners, not only of his work as a jazz
Mhm.
musician,
Yeah.
but as someone that was just endlessly curious about other cultures and their art and their music. And so he incorporated other influences. Um,
Mhm.
Certainly from black music uh, as him as a black American, and compositions of his called spiritual that had very much that traditional approach, but then also other cultures like Indian music.
Yeah.
He loved Indian music, and his son Ravi Coltrane is named
Mhm.
after the great
Ravi Shankar.
Ravi
Mhm.
Shankar, yes.
Yeah.
And and so he had compositions where he incorporated that kind of approach, and maybe it's just because it's in my blood, interest being biracial, bicultural, that when I heard that, it really resonated with me. Certainly in jazz, we have a long history of incorporating Latin music, Latin rhythms.
Mhm.
We do bossa
Mhm.
novas, Afro-Cuban all the time,
Right.
and that is a big part of my approach too. So those were some things. There's a colleague, a current contemporary of mine named Amir El Safar, who was
Mm,
an Iraqi trumpet player,
mm,
and he has done quite a lot of this same kind of incorporation of Middle Eastern music and jazz. Interestingly, I think that my work takes the two and maybe tips a little more towards the jazz side.
mhm,
His tips a little more towards the Middle Eastern side.
mm,
So two artists coming from the same kind of goal and having
mhm,
different
mhm,
different results. Um,
mm,
and I think interestingly, he and another trumpeter, a French Lebanese trumpeter named Ibrahim Malouf, um,
mm,
have done interesting work. We talked about the maqams, the Middle Eastern scales, and they have quarter tones. Well, those guys have worked in the quarter tones into their improvisation. And as trumpet players, they've worked out those quarter tones. So some wonderful artists that have inspired me in turn with my work and are out there on the scene doing
mhm.
great stuff of their own.
Good. Well, if you've just been joining us, we're talking about the creative process behind Todd Marcus's compositions. And Todd is going to be performing with his quintet at Joe's Movement Emporium next week. For the main show is on stage at 7 p.m. on Saturday, April 16th. And you can go to joesmovement.org and get your tickets and find out more about the show. And then also next Wednesday on the 13th, also at 7, we'll be having an in-person event that we'll be broadcasting on YouTube to learn more about Todd's community activism with intersections of change. Because he's not just an awesome composer, he's leading the way in some community development. Um, I know you've got some more stuff about your creative process inspiration related to your Egyptian culture. Is that what's next on your things you
Yeah.
want to share with us?
Well, having shared one of my compositions and you asking about inspirations,
Mm-hmm.
I want to talk about my biggest inspiration that as a musician who listened to these records that my dad gave me,
Mm,
that had my ears opened by listening to one pivotal Egyptian artist. His name was Abdel Halim Hafez,
Mm.
and he was a vocalist. If we think of American popular music, and if there was a Mount Rushmore of American music, right? You might have like James Brown and Elvis and like I don't know who else, right? But some of
Mhm.
these people,
Mhm.
Frank Sinatra, who knows, right? And some of these people that are so iconic to
Mhm.
kind of popular music of their time. Well, Abdel Halim Hafez was one of those titans in Egypt, and Egypt has long been kind of a cultural mecca or center or leader in a lot of music and entertainment. Many people might will know a famous um, Egyptian actor. My wife just in her book club was reading Dr. Zhivago
Mm.
and the film version with Omar Sharif. And
Mhm.
this is decades ago, but he was a very famous, well-known Egyptian actor.
Right.
Of course, in Western film, but of course, very established in Egypt. And
Mhm.
so, um, back to Abdel Halim Hafez, a vocalist that had these sprawling works composed for him. And we're going to listen to one now that, more than any other piece, has inspired my work. This is a composition of his called Uli Haga, and I'm going to share my screen with. You're going to see my face decrease so that we can get the better audio quality here.
Sure.
Let's give this a shot and listen here. And what you're going to hear as we dig in is um, what I was talking about in my composition: introductions, secondary introductions, themes, counter melodies. And I think why Middle Eastern music resonates so much with me is that it's wonderful storytelling and exposition,
Yeah.
and you're going to hear it in what we listen to now. All right, so we are a
Wow.
minute and a half in, and that was just the introduction.
What year was this made?
I have not been able to find this actual record other than the recording my dad put onto a cassette for me. So
Wow.
I actually don't know. I suspect it was probably in the 50s or so.
Uh-huh. That's great.
Um, so we're a minute and a half in. Let's hear what Abdel Halim Hafez himself sounds like now with this statement of the vocal melody.
لي حاجة أي حاجة قول لي حاجة أي حاجة قول بحبك قول كرهتك قول وما يهمكش حاجة قول لي عايزك قول لي بعتك بس قول لي أي حاجة أي حاجة يا حبيبي.
That's his first.
Wow. Wow, what a voice.
And you hear that it's very kind of romantic. There's such longing in
Mhm.
it, such passion.
Mhm.
Let's listen to a little bit more as he explores this further. Here comes our second
عمري
melody.
ما اتعودت تبقى معايا وتفكر لوحدك. عمري ده احنا الاتنين قلب واحد، دقته عندي وعندك. عمري ما اتعودت تبقى معايا وتفكر لوحدك. عمري ده احنا الاتنين قلب واحد، دقته عندي.
So it's this whole other movement. It's almost as if he's calling and asking questions. Let's listen to a
Mhm.
little bit more, and you're going to hear a little bit of him continuing to sing, the
Mhm.
ornamentations that flow around his voice, and a little bit of it'll lead into a kind of a call and response between him and the ensemble. Let's listen to
Okay.
that, and then we'll take another break.
وعندك وانت قلبي وانت املي، واللي مالك ساكت ليه؟ ولا قلبي ولا املي، والمخبي عليا ايه؟ وانت
There's
قلبي
our ornament.
وانت املي، واللي مالك ساكت ليه؟ ولا قلبي ولا املي، والمخبي عليا ايه؟ قول يا قلبي،
Come on,
قول
Angela.
يا املي، قول يا قلبي، قول يا املي، قول مخبي عليا ايه؟
So that gives us a whole lot that's going on, a whole
Yeah.
lot. We are 4 minutes and 17 seconds into this composition. That's 11 minutes and a half. So we're not even halfway yet. And so this is what I say that to me, it's such storytelling, such exposition. Um, there's such a romantic notion about it, and similar to way that I compose my music, whether it's pieces of mine that incorporate Middle Eastern influences or others that don't, taking our listener on a journey, right? If you read a
Right.
good book, or you watch a good film, it takes you on a journey. If it's just flat, it's not
Mhm.
interesting, right? And
Right.
so that's the beauty of music, of art, and why I like this music so much.
I can see why. Ah, it's good stuff. Thank you for sharing that. You can really picture a large dance ensemble bringing it to life.
Definitely, and when this music is performed, oftentimes you'll have a belly dancer.
Yeah.
You'll see that. Certainly, the percussionists are very visual and animated. So yeah, that I mean, maybe that's a potential collaboration in the future for us with Joe's. It's doing some of this with dancers involved.
Yeah. Be beautiful.
Well, let's do this. Let me just, as I said, that piece is 11 and a half minutes long. We're not going to listen to the whole thing, but let's drop in right at the ending and show you something that I think I've always thought is kind of funny about some of these pieces is that they go through amazing introductions and development, and then it gets to the end, and it's just almost as if they say, that's it. That's all I got. So let's hear how this epic sprawling composition finally comes to a close.
يا حبيبي كل حاجة أي حاجة قول بحبك قول كرهتك قول وما يهمكش حاجة قول لي عايزك قول لي بعدك بس قول لي أي حاجة أي حاجة يا حبيبي.
And that's it.
Wow. It almost like they just kind of trailed off and were exiting stage or something, or the sound engineer was trailing off.
Exactly.
Hmm.
So that go ahead.
And so I had an opportunity to visit Egypt, and I was asking people, some of the best music to do, and they're like, "Oh, you got to have Calhoun." So I have these old cassettes of Calhoun, but
Kulthum is one of the other ones that is, if we were talking about that Mount Rushmore of Middle
yeah,
Eastern music, she is the queen on
yeah,
top of that mountain.
yeah, beautiful voice. And I think there was probably some pieces that were recorded in the 70s, so it was a little bit different production value and shorter. But I know she had probably, I know it's decades and decades of work. She was phenomenal.
Yes. And there were, when she passed, my understanding is that there were tens of thousands of people that lined the streets for the procession,
Mhm.
and just like national mourning in the country and throughout the Middle East.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, maybe we can step away from music for a second, and I feel like there's an opportunity to take people a little bit visually over to Egypt. And I'm so excited to know that you were in Egypt. When were you there?
In the early 90s. Yeah, and I was traveling back from being studying abroad in Cameroon, and I met my mom in Egypt, and we had friends of my uncles that we got to spend time with. So it was really great to be with a family and get more of an insider look at some things.
Yes.
Hmm.
I mean, that's such a powerful thing. Anytime that you have that opportunity, and it makes me think about my early years of travels with our family, uh, because at that point I was still seventh, eighth grade, and so all the adults would sit in the tiny little living room
Yeah.
and talk and have conversation. And as kids, I went down with my little cousins, and we were running the streets of Cairo.
Fun.
And so to have family to take just to explore with, to take you to different places was
Hmm.
unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Wow.
Let's look at just some of the snapshots. One of the things that I feel very strongly about
Mm.
with challenges is, especially after 9/11 in our country, there was such xenophobia that built up around Middle Eastern people and countries. And so one of the things that I like to do in my work is to say, hey, here's what our culture is like. Here's a look at the modern city. So I'm going to show a few photos that, as this first one shows, this is Cairo. This is the middle of Cairo, and that is the Nile.
Yeah.
Uh, Egypt as a country is, I think, 98% of the population lives along the Nile. So it is literally and figuratively the lifeblood of the
Hmm.
country.
Yeah.
Much of the rest of the country is desert. And so the over the generations, the tens of thousands of years from ancient Egyptian civilization, you've got everything around the Nile. For folks that follow current events, you may have seen that there have been some tensions over the past years between Egypt and Ethiopia because Ethiopia has been building a new dam, a new hydroelectric dam uh, in Ethiopia that would form a massive lake and then generate power. And so you have major concerns, just like we're seeing issues in America in the West with the Colorado River and water limitations and water rights. Egypt and Ethiopia have been hashing through this as well. So this is a modern day. This is a 2015 photo from downtown Cairo from my hotel, and you can see how massive the river is there.
Yeah.
And mind you, this is in this current age where there are multiple dams on the river in existence, not just the one in Ethiopia, but you have two dams in Egypt itself, a low dam and a high dam at Aswan, which is in the southern part of Egypt where the river enters Egypt. So you see all the construction. Right here, we have the Egyptian Museum, again, along the Nile, and the massive scope of the city. The Egyptian Museum for decades was a central point of culture. More recently, Egypt has been building a massive multi-billion dollar new museum focused and concentrated at the pyramids. So I'm really looking forward to seeing that. Along the Nile, just as you have all the modern construction that we see here, you still have these sailboats called feluccas that more so are for tourists. And for Egypt, the economy has traditionally been so dependent on tourism, which is one of the reasons why after um, the Egyptian revolution in 2013, the country struggled so much because that led to people having concerns about being safe in Egypt. It really hurt the tourism industry. But normally, uh, with regular tourism, and I hear that things are doing a little bit better lately. This is one of the beautiful things. You can take a felucca ride on the Nile, and it's absolutely beautiful. Here's Cairo and the Nile and everything at nighttime, and it's absolutely beautiful. You see certainly all the traffic, but then along the Nile riverbanks, you see a lot of these are all boats. There's certainly a bigger one of the Nile cruise ships that you can take when you go to Egypt, and you can take a cruise. It's 3 to 4 days, and it goes and it stops at all the different ancient sites on the Nile. Another shot of the city, and you can see the boats all parked here. The massiveness of Egypt and its traffic, and that's something that we'll talk about in a second as well.
Wow.
So just beautiful, massive scopes, and that brings us back to the daytime shot and a photo of myself in 2015 when I had not been back to Egypt for almost 20 years at that point, and went for a performance, and being there on that bridge on the Nile was so special.
Mm.
I felt happy that this occurred before my dad passed a few years later, and it was interesting to see how much he loved this photo, to see his son back as an adult on the Nile.
Right.
I talked about those felucca boats, and this is one that I've included just to show you. This is with two of my uncles and one of my cousins, and this was on a trip in 2018, where amidst the performances that I went for, we my dad had passed at that point, and so we took the felucca boat out and spread his ashes in the Nile.
Wow.
All right, so that shows us a little bit of the city around the Nile. I talked to you about traffic, and you saw the traffic in a bunch of those So let's talk about that for a second. One of the compositions that I have on my new album is called Cairo Street Ride, and it really tries to capture the intensity of traffic in Egypt. Here, we're used to our roads, our lanes, our stoplights, our highways with traffic lanes. In Egypt, we don't have a whole lot of that. It's a lot more of almost just like a free for all. It's got its own system, but if you, as an American, think going over there that you would rent a car and take yourself around, or um, it's just not going to happen. Let's look at
and it's fast. It's so fast, and there's motorcycles and everything zipping around. It's incredible.
And amidst all of that, people just walking out in the middle of the street like nobody's business. Let's look at a couple of videos of this. All right, this is footage from Cairo.
That's a nice soundscape.
It really is. Let's watch one more, and I want everybody to look out for how people are mixed in with the traffic, and listen also to the horns. So here in the U.S., if we're driving, we use our horn when we're ticked off at somebody, right? If they're not paying attention, they run a red light, you slam that horn, or someone ticks you off and you hit the horn loud at them. In Egypt, it's a whole different approach. It's more like, let's think of it like sonar, right? You could tap the horn like, ding, which is saying, hey, I'm right behind you. Ding, hey, look out for that pedestrian coming up. Or, hey, what'd you have for breakfast? It's just like all these kind of things. Let's go ahead and look at two quick ones real quick here. Look out for all the people walking through the interconnected. Let's look at one last one. And be sure you see the folks just walking right through, not a care in the world right at the beginning. Here we go.
Then you feel it's become very narrow than you feel before.
So that's a fun look at that. That's an opportunity for us to play a little bit more music maybe, and let's listen to this composition. It's called Cairo Street Ride, and I hope that it will show how, as a composer, I've tried to take this experience of just the simple thing of being in a cab and moving around the city and a certain momentum. But as the piece develops, you'll listen for the horns of the cabs chirping at each other. You'll listen to the sound of the tires speeding up on the roadway. You'll listen to the engine revving up, and all with music. Let's give this a shot real quick. heard the main theme at this point. We've got the groove, the percussion given, the intensity of all the traffic. Now we're going to hear that part about the engine revving up, the horns honking at each other, the tires speeding up. Let's listen here. So that's
Wow.
our little preview there.
That was really good. I felt the traffic. It's amazing how you translated that into your composition. What instrumentation made that happen?
This is the same 9-piece group that we were listening to at the beginning with 6 horns, piano, bass, and drums, and trying to have the different voices, having that large ensemble allows you to have these different themes going on, or the visualization of the engine or the horn, the car horn honking.
That's great. So that album, you're going to release it in June?
It comes out in June. We'll be doing some pre-release dates starting in May.
Okay, that's great. I can't wait to attend one of those. Do you know some of the venues you'll be at?
May 11th, we'll be in Baltimore at Keystone Corner, our great new jazz club over the past 5 years. May 11th, I'm sorry, that's May 11th. May 12th, which is a Thursday, we'll be in Washington, D.C. at Blues Alley.
What? Okay, good. We're going to have to get a whole crowd of Joe's fans to come down.
Please, that would be wonderful. That'd be wonderful. And then the 13th, we continue out to Frostburg State University, and we'll do a clinic there and a concert there.
Wow, fantastic. Well, we're really excited for your 2 events next week. Again, on Wednesday the 13th at 7 o'clock, a deep dive into Todd's whole other world and his community activism with intersection of change, and some of his colleagues that are working in his Baltimore community. And then on the main stage at Joe's on Saturday at 7 p.m. You can sign up for both events at joesmovement.org. Good. So Todd, it's been a delight to get to know you as an artist, get to know you as a person. So thank you again for this great artist talk and all that you've shared with us tonight.
Thank you, Brooke. I appreciate it. And it's special because so often we'll do a performance, and as a band leader, we can talk a little bit in between the songs. But to have this kind of opportunity to talk with folks and to share, and perhaps it's even available for people that want to watch it later on, really starts digging into a level of additional insight. So thank you for making it possible, you and all your team.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Look forward to seeing you next week at Joe's and in Mount Rainier. Thank you.